So this will be a video of me reading aloud Warcraft of Blood and Honor by Chris Madsen. Like I said in my introduction video, I might upload some random garbage, and this is one of those random garbage videos that I going to upload. This is not shadowing. I will not be listening to anyone reading this book. I'm just gonna try to read it out loud on my own and see how can I correct my own mistakes if I can detect them. And yeah, I just need to get in tune with reading aloud in general. I did try shadowing yesterday uh, of Lord of the Rings, and it was intense. I'll have to admit, I did like 30 minutes of it. Yeah, it was really intense. It's you have to focus really hard, so you can't really do it for several hours. So yeah, but of course I will keep doing it every day. But in this video, I'm just going to read. As far as I know, this is the first like proper Warcraft book. It's not really long, just 53 pages, and that's including these these kind of pages that I don't even know how to name them. Just some kind of description, legal stuff. So yeah, I think I'm ready to go. All right. 1. A clash of arms. A soft, cool breeze blew through the upper branches of the mighty oak trees of the Hardglen woods. A peaceful quiet had fallen over the tranquil forest, leaving Tyrion Fordring alone with his thoughts. His grey stallion, Mirador, trotted at an easy pace along the winding hunting path. Though game had been strangely scarce for the past few weeks, Tyrion came to hunt here whenever the opportunity presented itself. He preferred the grandeur and crisp air of the open country to the musty, confining halls of his keep. He had been hunting in these woods since he was a small boy and knew their numerous winding trails like the back of his hand. This was the one place he could always find refuge from the burdens and bureaucratic pressures of his station. He must that some day he would bring his young son, Talon, to hunt with him so that the boy could experience the rugged majesty of his homeland for himself. Lord Paladin Tyrion Fordring was a powerful man. He was strong in both mind and body, and was counted as one of the greatest warriors of his day. Though he was slightly over 50 years of age, he still looked as fit and dynamic as he had when a younger man. His signature bushy mustache and his neatly trimmed brown hair were streaked with grey, but his piercing green eyes still shone with an energy that belied his years. Tyrion was the governor of the prosperous Alliance Principality of Herdglen, a large forested region nestled at the crossroads between the towering Alterac Mountains and the mist-shrouded shores of Darrowmere Lake. He was respected as a just governor, and his name and deeds were honored throughout the kingdom of Lordaeron. His great keep, Mardenhold, was the center of commerce and trade for the bustling region. The citizen of Herdglen took great pride in the fact that the keep mighty walls had never fallen to invaders. Even during the darkest days of the orcish invasion of Lordaeron, yet of late Tyrion was disgruntled. to find a different kind of army scurrying worriedly through the halls of his home. In recent weeks, the keep had been overrun with traveling dignitaries and representatives of the various nations of the Alliance, who passed through Heartglen on their secret diplomatic errands. He had met with many of them in person, offering his hospitality and assistance whenever he could, though the dignitaries were appropriately appreciative of his efforts. Tyrion could sense a growing tension within all of them. He suspected that they were charged with carrying dire news directly to the Alliance High Council. Try as he might, he could not discern the specifics behind their urgent communiques. Yet Tyrion, Fordring was no fool. After 30 years of serving the Alliance as a paladin, he recognized that only one thing could cause the otherwise stoic emissaries to be so troubled. War was returning to Lordaeron. It had been nearly 12 years since the war against the Orcish horde had ended. It was a terrible conflict that had raged across the Northlands, leaving many of the Alliance kingdoms razed and blackened in its wake. Too many brave men fell before the rampaging horde was finally stopped. Tyrion had lost a number of good friends and soldiers over the course of the war. To, though the Alliance had rallied at the 11th hour and pulled victory from the clutches of a certain defeat, it had paid a heavy price. Almost an entire generation of young men had selflessly given their lives to ensure that mankind would never be slaves to savage orc overlords. Near the end, what the hell I'm reading? I'm just imagining words that simply are not there. Sorry. Near the war's end, the battered and leaderless orc clans were rounded up and placed within guarded reserves near the outskirts of the Alliance lands, though as the precautionary measure it was necessary to police the reserves with full regiments of knights and footmen. The orcs remained docile and passive. Indeed, as time passed, the orcs seemed to lose their raging bloodlust and completely. The pacing is completely wrong when I'm reading, I think. I will start from the beginning of the sentence. Indeed, as the time passed, the orcs seemed to lose their raging bloodlust completely and lapse into a strange communal stupor. Some supposed that the whole brute's lethargy was brought on by inactivity, but Tyrion remained to be convinced. He had seen firsthand the orcs' brutality and savagery in battle. Memories of their heinous atrocities had plagued his dreams for years after the war. He, for one, would never believe that their warlike ways had left them completely. Tyrion prayed every night, as he always had, that conflict would never endanger his people again. Perhaps naively, I have to look this one up. I think I pronounced it incorrectly.
Naively.
Yes, of course. It's Tyrion prayed every night. Oh, no. Perhaps naively, he hoped fervently that his young son would be spared the rigors and horrors of war. As a paladin, he had seen far too many children orphaned or left for dead over the course of the tragic conflict. He wondered how any child could not become cold and disassociated when faced with terror and violence all around them. He would certainly never allow that to happen to his own boy. That was certain. Yet, despite his best wishes, he could not ignore the reality of the present situation. His closest aides and advisors had been telling him of the grim rumors for months now that the orcs were once again on the move. Hard as it was to believe, the presence of so many emissaries in his keep confirmed it to be true. If the orcs were foolish enough to rise up again, he would do whatever it took in order to stop them. Duty had always been the one constant in his life. He had spent the majority of his years defending Lordaeron in one way or another. Though he had not been born a noble, his enthusiasm enthusiasm, and honor had won him the rank of knight at the tender age of 18. Tyrion served his king, with undying loyalty and won a great deal of respect from his superiors. Years later, when the orcs first invaded Lordaeron, intent on crushing civilization, he was one of the first knights to be given the honor of standing with Uther the Lightbringer and being anointed as a holy paladin. Uther, Tyrion, and a number of devout knights were handpicked by the archbishop and Alonsus Faol to become living vessels of the holy light. Their special sacred charge was twofold. Aided by the holy light, the paladins would not only lead the fight against the vile forces of darkness, but heal the wounds inflicted upon the innocent citizens of humanity as well. Tyrion and his fellows were given the divine power to heal wounds and cure disease of every kind. They were imbued with great strength and wisdom that enabled them to rally their brethren and and give glory to the light. Indeed, the paladins' leadership and strength helped to turn the tide of the war and ensure the survival of humanity. Though, though, am I really pronouncing correctly? I think it sounds right, wrong.
though,
Though, though,
though,
though. Okay. Though his own light-given powers had waned somewhat over the years, Tyrion could still feel strength and grace flow through his aging limbs. Surely he would have strength enough when he needed it the most. His, for his son and for his people, he would have strength enough, he vowed. Clearing his head of concerns, Tyrion stopped to get his bearings. To his surprise, he found that he'd wandered much further up the the winding path than he'd intended. The path snaked. The path snaked its way up over the densely forested mountain. There were no outposts this far up, Tyrion remembered. As a matter of fact, he couldn't recall the last time he had ventured up this far. He took a moment to drink in the raw beauty of the place. He could hear babbling streams nearby and smell the clean, crisp air. The sky was blue and clear as he watched two falcons circle high above. He truly loved this land. He told himself that he'd return to this spot when a more opportune moment presented itself. Running his hand through his thinning, graying hair, he chided himself for becoming so lost in thought. He had come out to hunt after all. Tyrion deftly turned his mount around on the thin path and spurred Mirador to a quicker pace back down the mountain. He pulled sharply on the reins and steered his faithful mount into the dense woods. After a few minutes, he slowed his pace and galloped into a wide clearing that surrounded the ruins of an abandoned guard tower. He stopped near the old tower's base and peered up at the lonely structure. Like many other ruins that dot the land, it was a painful reminder of a darker time. The tower's walls were broken and scarred by blackened blast marks. Obviously, the work of orcish catapults, he thought. He remembered how the destructive machines had hurled their fiery, yeah, I think it's fiery, projectiles from great distances and devastated entire villages during the war. He wondered how the ruined structures could still be standing after having been left to the unforgiving elements for so long. While examining the tower base, he caught sight of strange tracks upon the ground. He dismounted to inspect them. His blood nearly froze in his veins as he realized that the oversized tracks had not been made by any man, and that they were fresh. Tyrion quickly looked around and found more tracks scattered throughout the clearing. He surmised. I don't even know what this means.
Surmised.
Surmised. Okay, I don't really have any vocabulary and I don't want to look up on Google because I can. Oh, I can just. I will just do it on the other screen. Forgive me. Surmised. Suppose that something is true without having evidence to confirm it. That's actually an interesting word. I don't think I have ever heard it before. So we have at least one word new today. He surmised that orcs had been here within the past few days at least. Could the wild brutes be mobilizing so soon, he wondered? No, there had there had to be some other explanation. Herdglen's Herd Herd Herdglen's borders were secure. There was no way that a group of orcs could go undetected in his land for any length of time. Subtly, subtly of all things, that was definitely not part of their nature. His scouts and guardsmen would have been alerted to any orcish incursion into Hardglen's immediately upon their arrival. Yet the fresh tracks were there, just the same. Tyrion walked Mirador around to the back of the tower and drew his heavy bastard sword from the scabbard attached to his saddle. He wished fervently that he had brought his mighty warhammer instead. Though, though, though he was well practiced with a blade, he would have preferred to wield his traditional hammer, as all paladins did in the face of danger. As stealthily as he could, Tyrion crept around the tower and entered through what was left of its front door. A number of large wooden beams had fallen from the rickety ceiling and splintered all over the chipped stone floor. He inspected the dilapid, dilapid, a funny word, dilapidated. I have to look this one as well. Sorry,
Dilapidated.
Dilapidated, in a state of disrepair or ruin as a result of age or neglect. Two words today. Impressive. He inspected the dilapidated guard room and found a small makeshift fire pit near a ragged patchwork bedroll. The fire in the ash-laden pit had only recently burnt out. Apparently, the orcs had taken up residence within the old tower. Strangely, he saw no weapons or token trophies, which the orcs were fond of collecting. He wondered what could possess the brute to so recklessly squat on Alliance-held lands. Deciding to return to the keep and gather his men, Tyrion exited the tower and strode boldly out into the clearing. To his surprise, he immediately locked eyes with a gargantuan orc, who had suddenly emerged from the tree line. The orc seemed as startled as Tyrion, dropped the bundle of firewood it had been carrying, and reached for the broad battle axe that was slung to its back. Tyrion gritted his teeth and brandished his own sword threateningly. threateningly, threat, threateningly, threateningly. I know this word. I just can't seem to pronounce it.
Threateningly.
Threatening,
Threateningly.
threateningly,
Threateningly.
threateningly. Brandished his own sword threateningly. Slowly the orc planted his feet firmly on the ground, unslinging the mighty axe. It had been years since Tyrion had laid eyes on an orc. He looked upon the brute with unabashed awe and revulsion. Yet, through his surging adrenaline, Tyrion noticed that there was something quite different about this orc. Certainly, the creature was an Certainly the creature was as immense and well muscled as any other he had beheld. Its coarse green skin and ape-like stance marked it as clearly as any other orc. Even its hideous tusks and pointed ears were reminiscent of every savage that Tyrion had faced during the war, but something in the creature's stature and demeanor seemed different. There was an aged weight in its stance and far too many wrinkles around its eyes. Its ratty beard and ritually top-knotted hair bore heavy streaks of grey, where most orc warriors adorned themselves with mismatched plates of armor and spiked gauntlets. This one wore only stitched furs and ruddy leather pants. Its calm, lethality and assured comfortable battle stance clearly indicated that this orc was no rampaging youngster, but indeed a seasoned veteran. Despite its apparent age, it was potentially more dangerous than any orc Tyrion had ever faced. This, the hulking creature stood motionless for a long moment, as if daring Tyrion to make the first move. Tyrion quickly surveyed the tree line to make certain that there were no other orcs preparing to ambush him. Peering back at the orc, he found that it had not moved even an inch. The orc nodded as if to confirm that it was alone. The creature's knowing gaze left Tyrion with the impression that it wanted his full attention before it engaged him in combat. Feeling somewhat unhinged by the orc's calm demeanor, Tyrion lunged forward. The orc easily sidestepped Tyrion's initial attack and brought his great axe around in a wide arc. Reflexively, Tyrion ducked under the savage strike and rolled into a defensive crouch. Seizing the moment, he thrust his blade up at the orc's exposed belly. The creature expertly blocked the thrust with the shaft of his axe and leapt backwards to give himself more room to maneuver. Tyrion feinted to his right and then brought his blade around in a sweeping reverse thrust. Momentarily caught off guard by the clever move, the orc whirled around in the opposite direction and brought his axe down in a phased overhead swipe, meant to cut Tyrion in two. Tyrion rolled out of the way of the axe as the axe crashed down only inches from where he had stood. The two opponents straightened and squared off once more. They stared at one another in surprise. Tyrion had to admit that the orc was as formidable as a foe as he had ever faced. The grim smile that passed over the orc's bestial face seemed to impart a similar respect for Tyrion's own abilities. They began to circle one another, each sizing up others' strengths and weaknesses. Tyrion was again surprised by the orc's demeanor and focus. Every other orc he had encountered had rushed forwards with reckless abandon, preferring savagery and brute force to finesse and tactical maneuvering. This orc, however, demonstrated remarkable skill and self-control. For a moment, Tyrion wondered whether or not he could actually best the creature. For a split second, he worried that his tired limbs and reflexes would fail him at a crucial moment. Sporadic thoughts of his beloved wife and son being left to fend for themselves without him flashed through his mind, weakening his resolve by a fraction. With a derisive snort, he shook off his thoughts and readied his weapon. He had faced death 100 times. He had a job to do. He relaxed slightly and reminded himself that his battle instincts were as sharp as ever, and he had power of the light on his side. No matter how impressive the orc's fighting prowess might be, it was still a creature of darkness as far as he was concerned. It was the sworn enemy of humanity, and for that it had to die. Rushing forward with grim resolve, Tyrion slashed at the orc with every ounce of strength he could muster. The orc was forced to give ground before the paladin's furious attack. Tyrion pushed the orc backwards it, until it felt as if his sword arm would burst into flames. The orc managed to block and counter a number of the paladin's thrusts, but was thrown off balance by an expertly placed strike. Tyrion cut a gaping gash in the orc's thigh, sending the brute stumbling into the dust. The old orc grunted loudly as it slammed down onto packed dirt. Gripping his bloodied leg in pain, the orc attempted to rise again, clearly expecting Tyrion to take advantage of its precarious position. To its obvious surprise, Tyrion backed off and slowly motioned for it to rise. The orc blinked in astonishment. Tyrion was a paladin, a knight of the silver hand, and to him butchering a fallen foe in the midst of single combat was unquestionably dishonorable. The holy code of his order demanded that he give the orc a reprieve. He nodded to the orc in assurance, and once more motioned for him to rise. Gritting his sharp, yellow teeth in pain, the orc slowly recovered his axe and got to his feet. They stood there for a moment facing each other with eyes locked. The orc straightened slightly and raised his clenched fist to his heart. A salute. Tyrion realized. Now it was Tyrion's turn to blink in disbelief. Certainly, no savage orc had ever saluted him in battle before. He conceded that perhaps there was more to the first fierce creature than he would have guessed. Nevertheless, it was his enemy. He nodded to the orc in understanding and raised his sword again. This time, it was the orc who surged forward. Unable to support its great weight upon its wounded leg, the orc was forced to lunge at the paladin with short, violent leaps. Wielding its heavy axe with one hand, the mighty orc slashed wildly at Tyrion. The paladin was hard pressed to evade the brute savage blows, and was forced back towards the tower's entrance. Barely dodging a particularly brutal strike, Tyrion crashed into the guard room through the open doorway. Momentarily stunned, Tyrion roared as the razor-sharp axe bit deep into his left arm. Fighting to keep his head clear from pain, he managed to slash at the orc's exposed hand. The surprised orc howled in rage as his axe clattered upon the stone floor. Tyrion moved in, hoping to end the duel as quickly as possible. Instantly, the orc grabbed hold of a fallen beam and swung at the advancing paladin. Tyrion backed up a pace as the orc swung the beam in a clumsy arc. The beam smashed into the brittle wall. Dust and loose rock rained down from the high ceiling. The remaining beams creaked and groaned as the tower's wall shifted their weight. Tyrion continued his attack, cutting the orc's makeshift weapon to splinters with every further strike. Realizing that the desperate nature of its situation, the orc dropped what was left of the beam and lunged straight at Tyrion with its sinewy arms outstretched. Howling in fury, the massive orc reached out for Tyrion's throat. The paladin managed to stop the orc once before the full weight of the creature's body slammed into his. The two entangled combatants crashed into the weakened wall as the rickety ceiling finally gave away and collapsed down upon them. Tyrion woke to the sounds of creaking timber and clattering stone. He blinked as the thick clouds of dust settled all around him. All else was back in the shuttered guardroom. His body was numb, but he could feel a great pressure upon his chest. As the dust cleared, he could see that he was pinned under a large split beam. His legs, too, were pinned beneath immense chunks of mortar. Fanatically, he looked around for any sign of the orc. He would be defenseless if creature decided to finish him off. Reaching down, he grabbed hold of the beam and heaved with all his remaining strength. The beam toppled to the side and clattered against the rubble. Pain immediately flooded Tyrion's body. His head swam as the open cut on his arm gushed into precious blood upon the floor. He attempted to lift himself up and felt an acute burst of pain as his broken ribs ground against one another. His right leg, too, felt like it might be broken beneath the heavy blocks of mortar. His battered body reeling from agony and exhaustion, Tyrion felt as he would black out. He, he could hear the remaining walls of the structure creaking and groaning. The whole tower was going to collapse. With conscience rapidly slipping away, Tyrion sensed a rustling behind him. Fighting to stay awake, Tyrion barely turned to see the orc's green, menacing hands reaching out for him. His grasp of terror was shortcut as blackness overtook him. Okay. This was first chapter of Blood and Honor by Chris Madsen. This is first time I ever read this book. Obviously, I'm well acquainted with lore of Warcraft, so but I have no idea who this orc is. I do know obviously who is Tyrion Fordring, so it will be interesting to find out in future when I continue to read this who this orc is, because I suspect it's obviously some named character. It's not just some random orc. How long it been? It been an and half an hour. I think that would be decent. Yeah, this is so much easier than shadowing, obviously. I don't have to worry about, but as you, if there's anybody ever watching this, I made countless mistakes, and yeah, I'm like, I often catch myself trying to fix, like I start pronouncing something, but I instantly recognize that I'm saying it incorrectly, so mid word I like stutter and just restart the word from the beginning, trying to fix it, and it's probably very uncomfortable for listeners. Even when I speak, I think I do it quite often. So yeah, that's something I need to work on, and I hope that by doing these loud readings, it will help. Hopefully, like a modern internet resident, I did look up online what do people say about reading aloud in foreign languages in your target language which you are learning, and it's kind of mixed. A lot of people think that it's useless. You will like ruin your accent even further. You will keep making mistakes. You will not be able to catch them, and you will train your pronunciation wrong. and I kind of agree with them. But there's also another camp of people that say that it's actually useful. You get to speak, you get to practice actually pronouncing. But yeah, obviously it would be way easier if there was somebody correcting my mistakes. But yeah, it would essentially mean that I would have to hire a native speaker to just sit next to me and constantly correct me. And yeah, I don't know. We will see. We will see. I think it depends. If you are learning like a new language and you just started, then I think this would be really bad for you. I would agree with the first camp a lot because you have no idea how things are supposed to be pronounced. But like in my case, I have been learning English, like not not actively learning, but in general, I have been in English speaking internet and everything for better part of my entire life. So it's almost it's like it's at least 2 decades, and I kind of know how things are supposed to sound. So when I pronounce them incorrectly, I think I am able to sense that I'm pronouncing it pronouncing it incorrectly. So I think like the first camp of people that's mostly for like new learners. They don't really know, but I know like it doesn't mean that I can like fix it. Like that's not what I'm trying to claim. Like I know when I pronounce something incorrectly, but I still can struggle to actually pronounce it correctly, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is like another reason why I'm trying this to improve, because I kind of feel that if you have learned English and used English for 2 decades, you should be able to speak like way better. Like I'm not happy with the way I'm talking, and especially right now when I was reading, I noticed like this stuttering, constant stuttering, and uh, going back a word in mid word to essentially pronounce it correctly. It sounds terrible. Also, I think I have an issue with like the tempo, the way I'm reading, because sometimes I feel that I'm rushing, and then I noticed this a lot when I was shadowing yesterday. Is that I tend to rush. I would like sometimes I would like when you're shadowing, you're supposed to be behind the audio, but I would often rush ahead of it, which I felt is n- not felt. Yeah, it's not correct. It's fundamentally not correct. You have to be behind the audio and not in front of it. So yeah, and then I try to slow down and I start and but eventually I start to rush again. And here I felt this as well. I think I need to read slower and put more focus, because sometimes I even uh, read words that are not there because somehow my mind assumes that there should be. Like a lot of times I wanted to put articles in front of words that shouldn't have it. Yeah, the articles are a completely different story. I do have problem with them. So yeah, I think I can ramble for 1 minute. So this video is 40 minutes long, and but what can I ramble around? So yeah, next video probably I will be reading chapter 2 of this very fine short book. I want to finish it. I think it's possible. Like it's a single day. Like it's nothing. And yeah, I think I will upload a few of these Warcraft books because they are quite short. Like the early ones, like the ones that were written by Chris Metzen, not the novels that you know, the popular ones. Like I think most people don't even know about this. I bet it's like not even canon by now. It's like retconned, and so yeah. My OBS is saying in just few seconds before 40. So yeah, thank you for listening and goodbye.